So I had a interesting morning, basically thinking about the NDP and the Leap Manifesto, and basically not every attitude on the oil industry, but some attitudes on the oil industry. And once you throw the Leap Manifesto in there, you're automatically talking about change from the fossil fuel energy that we currently were dependent on, basically. And I think I'm sure there's people who disagree with me. Well, obviously, but to remain sort of neutral on the topic, and not say anything that's too spiked, because I'm not really sure myself. I would say that I don't think that environmentalists or people who are behind the Leap Manifesto, and including the NDP, even though the Leap Manifesto is something they're just debating, it's not to say that they're going to adopt it. They're facing some challenges, especially from Rachel Notley in Alberta, who's already said that she's against it and that it's ill-informed, so she won't be adopting it. And I think that a lot of people who are for it, who have basically said, yes, we can create, tomorrow begins today, and we can make that change from a dependency on oil. I don't think that they're completely ignorant of our current dependence on fossil fuel, and the systems in place that allow for that. Also, the oil lobby in Alberta. These things are pretty politically very powerful. So, and on a societal scale as well, the dependence on fossil fuels is not something that's to be taken lightly. We're talking cars and byproducts and jobs, etc., etc. So the idea, though, is that if we continue going the way we are in terms of supporting the oil industry, apparently that's going to create a 43% growth in the oil industry. And this is coming from an article by Linda McQuaig in the Toronto Star, which would effectually amount to an 84% carbon production or carbon emission. Carbon emissions by 2050, which is well above what should be happening in terms of fossil fuels, and that's from Canada. So 84% of carbon emissions coming from Canada would be based on the oil industry. So all that being said, I think I have a feeling this video is kind of confusing. I'm kind of confusing myself, but anyway, the point being is I don't think that proponents of the Leap Manifesto or of any manifesto or public policy that looks for a transition from fossil fuels to sustainable energy, I don't think that they're completely ignorant of dependency now, but I think what they're saying is that this dependency now seems to be fueling a dependency well into the future, and that's what they're trying to get away from. Is the Leap Manifesto too absurd and too radical? I could see how that could be, but at the same time, do you want the apocalypse of the oil industry or the apocalypse of the environment, right? It does play a role, and according to some scientists, we live in a decade where it's kind of crucial now that we start rolling back on our emissions and looking at our polluting industries more carefully and even restructuring them. So essentially what they're saying is if anything's going to be done to have any sort of real effect, it should be done now. So I think there's a sense of urgency as well when it comes to environmental causes and dependency on fossil fuels, etc., etc. Anyway, that's my video for today. I was going to go on about heteronormative and homonormative again, but just to say I'm not going to go on about it too much. Just a little bit, just saying that I feel a lot of times what people describe as homonormative is basically they just look at the heteronormative archetype and just call it gay, and that's homonormative, which is probably what they're trying to say anyway. But all or maybe that's what the definition of the word is. But I'll continue fighting with that, and when I have something better to say, I'll put it up. But until then, bye.